on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube for over 550 episodes. This is Talkin Science.
Welcome to Talkin Science Live. As you can tell, we are very live. Good morning. Welcome to Studio 4. Matt Miller with you. It's a very special Talkin Science live stream. Perseverance rover is just under 40 minutes away from landing on Mars. It's got a drone, it's got a sample collection mission as well. It is all very, very exciting. We're going to take you live to the NASA live stream right after our own special coverage. We have a couple of great guests to come up. I'm throwing the script completely out the window. We've had a bit of a rough start to the morning. Dr. Brad Tucker will be here very shortly, my Talkin Science co-host, with an overview of the mission. Glen Nagle from the Canberra Deep Space Communication Complex here to talk about communicating with those satellites, and I do hope that my audio is in sync here. Been having some issues with that in the past. This is the first live stream from Studio 4. Let me know in the comments. I can already see only coming out of the left speaker. And while I fix that, I can tell you that we also have Dr. David Flannery from the Queensland University of Technology. He is talking about the mission specifics, the parameters of the mission. That's where exactly do I get this, not that button, one of these buttons. While I figure that out, let's take you straight over to Dr. Brad Tucker and I discussing where's my mouse cursor gone? This is all happening for us this morning. Dr. Brad Tucker talking about the mission specifics, and I believe I have a question to get that started. Yes, indeed. Earlier in the week, I spoke with Brad to get a sense of the overall mission objectives. We're definitely not far away from arriving at the Red Planet.
Yeah, a really exciting mission ahead that, again, hopefully should get there at some point. Hopefully it not only just gets there, but that it obviously lands right away. And that's what obviously Perseverance is trying to do, is get that landing down right away and at the same time operate. So we won't know for about 20 minutes or so, I think, until after the landing scheduled, whether it was successful or not. And we probably won't get back first images or data for a few days after that. But at least it should hopefully make it, fingers crossed.
Brad, this one's really interesting. We've got Glen Nagle and Professor David Flannery coming up on today's live stream, talking about the mission in particular. Glen from Tidbinbilla, our good friend, talking about the communication of this rover, this mission. It's a busy time for them around the Red Planet. So many missions happening, so much stuff happening. As he calls it, it's the traffic jam of the solar system.
It really is. And it's not just as, and I know Glenn will talk about this, but it's not just as straightforward as pointing this big radio telescope and it working. You obviously have multiple probes there. And in addition to the already 6 or 8 existing ones as well around Mars, plus the rovers on Mars and the other missions on Mars. So getting the right frequency, the right mission, and the right download link is quite critical. There was always a story back in Apollo 13 that the lunar module and the stage 2 of the rocket broadcasted on the same frequency. And so this was always fine because the lunar module was supposed to only be used days later. Of course, in Apollo 13, that didn't happen that way. And the workers at Honeysuckle Creek and Tidbinbilla had to separate the frequency so they could hear what's going on in the lunar module around the noise of that stage 2 rocket. So it is not just a walk in the park. You don't just, turn on the channel and click, click, click. I got my Mars receiver.
And David Flannery is going to talk about his contribution to the Perseverance mission, which of course is the sample collection portion of it. So there's there's so much going on with this mission. There's so many mission parameters. Not only is there the lander, there's the rover, and there's also a drone happening as well. This is probably this is the Swiss Army knife of Mars missions.
Yeah, look, they're doing a lot. I really am excited about the drone, to be honest. I mean, like, obviously everything else is really cool. I think just the drone is a bit underappreciated, how cool it will be that in a week or two, we may have a drone flying around Mars. And while this is just to test it and that first step, this could and will revolutionize how we explore planets. They're already looking at drones called Dragonfly around Titan, to go around Titan looking for things. This is a new technology that we didn't have 10 or really 20 years ago that we can now incorporate into these missions. So it's really exciting to see it, in addition to everything else that Perseverance will tell us about Mars.
And that's a really interesting thing about planetary missions with robots. They have to be designed so far into the future from launch date and locked in as well, don't they? So if new technology comes around, it can't necessarily be easily added to the mission parameters.
Yeah, you can't just add it in. You can't just add this last thing in of, oh, sure, we could just add it. And, this changes the weight, the launch, the orbits. It changes every little bit about the thing. And again, you could think about this as airplanes. You often hear of they have luggage limits, or they have to remove passengers or change it, or they can't have a last minute passenger because they've already balanced their fuel and their flight plans and those sorts of things. And this is 800 more thousand times complicated and dangerous, not discounting aviation here, but is just a completely different level. So you have to dial that in. And this is always one of the negatives, but also what we're seeing the change in space is technology is now accelerating at a very great rate. So now these missions are being built faster so that they can take advantage of that newer technology instead of being 10 years out of date by the time it's launched.
Well, Brad, we are just minutes away from getting that telemetry back from the Red Planet. Perseverance hopefully will be landing, or has landed by now, with this 10 to 20 minute light delay, this 10 to 20 light minute delay from Mars. It's a very exciting morning. It's a very exciting fortnight for exploration of the planets. And as we talked about on Tuesday, we're going off and exploring moons in the solar system. You mentioned Titan there as well. We spoke about Europa on Tuesday. Plenty of missions, plenty of study still to be done in our solar system, and Perseverance is just another piece of the puzzle.
That's right. And it won't be the last piece. And I think that's always the thing, is this isn't going to be the thing that solves and answers every Martian question, but hopefully gives us the data to lead us on that next path to the bigger adventures that Mars holds.
Well, let's bring in Professor David Flannery now from the Queensland University of Technology. David, thanks for a little bit of your time this morning. What does today mean for you?
Okay, Matt, it's nice to be here. Well, today is a big day for us working on the Perseverance mission, because we'll be arriving at Mars, entering the atmosphere and landing on the surface.
It's a culmination of such a long time in the build-up to this mission. A couple of delays there with Mars 2020, as it was called. Now the Perseverance mission. It's taken 6 months to get to Mars. We had a chat in December as Hayabusa returned, talking about sample collection missions, and we'll get into that in a second. But this journey of 6 months waiting and hoping that your baby is going to make it and going to survive, I was going to say re-entry, but entry into Mars.
Yeah, to be honest, the most worrisome phases of the mission are behind us, I think. The actual building of the hardware, designing and building the hardware, getting it done on schedule and in time for launch. And cruise is fairly uneventful, an uneventful time. But the definitely soft landing on the surface of Mars is the most technically challenging aspect of this mission, and the point at which probably things are most likely to go wrong. So I think we've all got our fingers crossed.
It's a little bit flying in an aeroplane, isn't it? The takeoff and the landing are the hardest parts. Cruise is pretty easy. Same sort of thing with launching a robot mission to Mars. Fingers crossed that in the next hour or so, we're going to have that telemetry that Perseverance has survived the landing. What's it going to be doing on the surface of Mars for about a year, I think it is?
The Prime mission is 1 Mars year, which is actually about 2 Earth years. And we have a very ambitious set of goals. We'll be investigating the geology of Jezero Crater, which is an impact crater that was once full of water and represented a lake, which we think might have been a habitable environment, sort of place where microbes that we have on Earth could have survived. So we'll be looking for signs of past life in the rocks there and trying to understand what the environment was like. And we'll also be caching samples as we go along. And we need to cache a couple of dozen samples. These are slivers of rock about the size of a pencil. We'll leave them on the surface and with a lot of great notes, and hopefully the next mission NASA sends will pick them up and maybe a third mission will pluck them out of Mars orbit and bring them back to Earth.
It's a long-term goal with those sample collections. Is that simply, we were talking with Brad a little earlier about how these missions are planned well in advance. Is it a little bit of technology not yet available to grab these samples and bring them back to Earth? So doing what you can right now, which is picking up the samples and putting them in a safe place, as it were.
That's right. I think that planning for these follow-on missions that we'll need, the Fetch rover, for example, as we call it, the rover that will pick up the samples, is fairly well advanced, but we don't have, NASA doesn't have all the funding it needs from Congress, the US government, to build all of that yet. And the third mission would be the least well-planned mission. It's probable that we'll need to send those samples into Mars orbit with this follow-on mission. And then we'll probably need a third mission, which could be a human mission. As it turns out, the NASA's human spaceflight programs roughly align in the timeline. And so it could be the case that the first human mission to Mars might be like the first Apollo mission to the moon, in that the astronauts wouldn't land, they'd orbit Mars and then come back. And a reason for them to go would be to pluck these samples out of Mars orbit and bring them back.
It's an incredibly ambitious goal, a long-term strategy. As part of the team developing these mission parameters, how's your patience level? I guess you have to have a really long vision into the future.
Yeah, I think that if we cache some really compelling samples, they will be coming back at some point. And I'll probably be a lot older than I am now when they finally get back, but hopefully I'll still be around. And it'd be great to get to study those with our own hands and our own analytical instruments in the labs back on Earth.
Well, sample collection isn't the only goal of Perseverance. It's also packing a drone. I believe this will be the first time anything human-made is flown on Mars. What's the drone going to be doing?
The Mars helicopter is a technology demonstration, really. It will prove the concept, show that we can actually do this, and it could potentially be used for some scouting tasks. It can move a lot faster than we can with the rover, and so potentially it could be sent to investigate rocks in the distance and tell us what they're like. And certainly in the future, there's a lot of potential in this technology. And it's not hard to imagine numerous Mars helicopters or small unmanned aerial vehicles moving around in a swarm and mapping the surface of Mars, or the Earth for that matter, in much greater detail than we can today.
Now, Perseverance is joining 2 other missions on the surface of Mars that have landed in the last fortnight. The United Arab Emirates with the Hope Mars mission in orbit. China's Tianwen-1, which is in orbit and also on the surface as well. In terms of scientific community, is there a bit of a collaboration with all these sort of missions? If something is found on one mission, is there data shared, analysis shared to succeed other missions?
Well, NASA releases all science results in a timely manner, and the Deep Space Network is shared to some extent. We need orbiters in order to get data back from the surface. The Perseverance rover, for example, is capable of communicating with the Earth directly, but at a very low bit rate. And so we really need those orbiters to relay the data back. And we can use European orbiters or European Space Agency orbiters, as well as all of the NASA assets to help us do that job. And the science data should be available for everyone, including anyone on the planet to study. The Chinese Space Agency hopefully will follow the same precedent set by NASA, and they've been fairly good releasing data from their really successful moon missions, but I think a lot remains to be seen.
Well, fantastic, David. We are just minutes away from Perseverance landing on Mars, or at least the telemetry back with that 11.5 light minute delay. So very much looking forward to this. Glen Nagle's going to talk to us shortly about the communicating with the spacecraft. But I guess for you really want to see that telemetry, see it survive on the planet, and see your mission come to life.
That's right. Please keep your fingers crossed. Really looking forward to this period of operations where we actually get to operate our hardware on the surface. Won't be long now.
Okay, well, we are just minutes away from receiving those first pictures from the Red Planet. Let's bring in Glen Nagle now from the Tidbinbilla Deep Space Communication Complex. The team working there right now are part of 3 stations around the world, keeping missions on track and in control of Perseverance. Glen, perfect timing for you. It is perfect timing for you, Glen, as Deep Space 43 has just been brought back online.
Yeah, it's been a huge project, 11 months to do a major upgrade on the dish, putting in new transmitters, new electrical systems, new water coolant systems, all sorts of energy efficiency systems to take this nearly 50-year-old antenna and keep it operating for at least another 30 or 40 years.
It is absolutely incredible. It's come online at exactly the right time. It's a very busy time around the Red Planet. Communications must be really tight to get some time to talk to everything going on around the Red Planet at the moment.
Yeah, we refer to Mars as sort of the traffic jam of the solar system. You've got 10 active spacecraft there right now. Perseverance about to arrive to join that really busy place that is now the Red Planet, the planet of the robots.
Exactly right. I think one thing that sort of fades from the public mind is that the arrival is much televised, much coverage, mainstream media talk about it for a couple of days, and then that's it. But from your perspective and your team's perspective, that's not it. You've got to keep communicating with these missions, with these robots for the lifetime of their missions and even beyond as they keep functioning.
Yeah, and even before, we actually started work on this mission from a Deep Space Network point of view about 2 years ago, starting all the training that you need to do for every new spacecraft. It's kind of like an astronaut training for a deep space mission or a mission to the moon. Yeah, we've got to do the same here. All the issues that could go on with a rover during the course of its journey to Mars, of course, during its landing phase, which is really, really critical, all the communication that goes around that. And then, of course, all the time that it will be on the planet itself. So you never know, you can get a spacecraft going into a safe mode or a failure mode at any point along the way. And of course, the Deep Space Network is always the first point of contact to deal with those issues and to get the information needed to the mission science team so that they can recover their spacecraft. So for us, this is just the start of what will be an even busier period than it has been for the last 2 years.
And there's so much more to Perseverance as well. They're going to launch a drone. They're going to do a sample collection as well. Plenty of stuff to keep communications busy. And it's not instant. There's an 11-minute delay between sending and receiving.
Yeah, so at the time of landing, it's 11 minutes and 22 light seconds to Mars. So with our radio signals traveling at the speed of light, 11 minutes 22 to come back from Mars to here, and of course to get any information back. So for much of this stage of the mission, particularly the landing phase, it's all up to the rover to use all of the programming on board, all of its flight dynamics to be able to head down towards Mars, decelerate at the right time, pop the parachute at the right time, deploy the heat shields, separate the spacecraft, fly down to the surface, and then it gets even more complex with the landing system itself. Actually, this time using sort of imagery navigation to fly down and find the best spot to set this rover down in. So, yeah, there's a lot can happen just in this little 7 minutes, during the landing phase. We have no control of it. All we get to do back here on Earth is receive that data from both the vehicle itself, sending back line of sight information, but then it gets even more complex when the spacecraft heads down into Jezero crater. Earth, from its point of view, actually falls below the horizon. So we have to use what is called a bent pipe relay, using some of the orbiters like the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the MAVEN spacecraft, which will be passing over that region at the time to actually get the signals from the rover as it descends, as it lands on the surface, and relay those back to us here on Earth. So we have continuous communication during the entire landing phase.
Wow, that is incredible. It's a technical marvel how it's all achieved. For myself, working in television here in Australia, working in our master control operations, as I've talked about before when speaking with you, know a little bit about microwave frequencies and stuff. Certainly not on the scales of deep space communication, but how does that work with so much activity around Mars? Is everyone assigned a separate frequency to talk on?
The simple answer is yes. The shorter, even more accurate answer is no. There is actually a little bit of crossover with some of the frequencies on spacecraft. And that was particularly true some years ago when, most specifically, when we had the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter in orbit, and it's still there, and when we had the Mars rovers operating on the surface, the Mars Exploration Rovers Spirit and Opportunity. They actually operated at the same frequencies because nobody believed that the Mars rovers would still be going when Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter arrived in orbit. So there was a little bit of work that had to go on there to separate those frequencies so that you weren't confusing one spacecraft or another. But there can also be interesting issues when you get sort of, a false positive signal back from a spacecraft. It can be a spacecraft coming around Mars. And as it comes around Mars, you're getting a shift in that frequency. So the spacecraft can sort of look like it's another spacecraft, for a very short period of time. But yes, you're quite right. All the frequencies in the spacecraft, it's like tuning into a different radio station. They all have their own specific frequencies, their own way of communicating, and all the checks that we have to know that we are talking to that specific spacecraft. So for this landing, there won't be any confusion at all. There will be definite signs that we're only getting material information back from the Perseverance rover and the landing system, and of course from the orbiters, which will be relaying that data back as well.
And last up, Glen, who has the all-important receiving responsibility for the landing telemetry?
Well, unlike the last 20 years, where it's all fallen on Canberra's shoulders to handle all of the arrivals at Mars, we're sharing the love this time with our two sister stations around the world in Spain and California. Just the way that the planets align, Mars will be over Spanish antennas at that particular time, but the way the network works, it'll actually be our Californian station in control of all of the antennas around the world. We take over about an hour after landing when we're receiving some of the first data coming back from the surface, perhaps even some of the first images if they don't come in the first few minutes, and downlinking some really valuable data that the rover will be sending up to the orbiters for relay back to Earth, which will be more information about the landing phase. We may get some of the images from the lander, looking up at the separation of the sky crane vehicle. Also, we might even get some views of the parachute deploying from the descent stage. So there's lots of exciting stuff to come back. But effectively in those first few hours, we'll be getting the information back, putting the rover to sleep for the night, lands late in the afternoon, local Mars time, and getting ready for the next day. We start full surface operations on Mars.
And there we go. We can see me. It is almost about that time. Perseverance is on its way, and we are just under 20 minutes from getting that telemetry back of landing. We're going to take you now to the NASA TV live stream. I am still working on some audio issues there. It's been a fun morning for live streaming here at Trekzone. Thanks for being with us. I know there's over 1 million people watching the NASA live stream, but hopefully we gave you some insight into the Australian contributions of the Perseverance rover. Very much looking forward to this mission over 2 years, 2 Earth years on the Red Planet, doing things that's never been done before, collecting samples, depositing them on the Red Planet, ready for another mission to come and pick them up and get them into orbit. And as David Flannery said, hopefully a third mission to bring them back to Earth, either that's human or robotic. Very exciting times ahead. And of course, we can't forget the Mars helicopter, the first time a human-made object has flown in the Martian atmosphere. That's going to be absolutely exciting as well. So plenty of stuff to look forward to, plenty of vision going to be coming out of all of this, thanks to Tidbinbilla, Madrid, and the Goldstone arrays of the Deep Space Communication Complex. Very exciting times. And for all the latest Aussie stuff, you can, of course, tune in to Trekzone. We've got Talkin Science interviews on Thursdays, and plenty more science content as well. We are the world's only daily science, space, and science fiction podcast network. Let's take you now to NASA.
From then on and out, things happen
We are switching
fast.
to the MFSK tones. Telemetry will have stopped.
Telecom is confirming that the spacecraft has switched to broadcasting tones. These tones are received directly from Perseverance, but have very limited information content. We won't receive real-time information until about 9-10 minutes from now, once the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter starts relaying information from Perseverance. We are under a minute from cruise stage separation, about 10.5 minutes from entry interface.
It's getting exciting. I have to admit, I am quite anxious, but very hopeful that this machine is going to do what we asked it
We are
to
seeing
do.
the heartbeat tones.
Okay, that means that there's no more ones and zeros coming. It's just the vehicle telling us it's still alive.
We're continuing to receive tones from Perseverance, standing by for cruise stage separation. We have indication that cruise stage separation has been confirmed by the spacecraft.
We're off on a good start.
In about 1 minute, Perseverance's landing software will wake up and begin the final preparations for entry. The first action it will do is to fire warm-up pulses with its entry thrusters. These pulses ensure that the spacecraft gets the thrust that it wants during entry interface. We're about 9 minutes from entry interface.
Okay, so now the vehicle's on its own. It's turning itself into the direction of facing the heat shield toward Mars, and will eventually hitting the top of the atmosphere. We're not far away. This is going to go very quickly from here on out.
That's confirmation that we got shadowed by the cruise stage as it passed through our beam to the Earth.
At this point, the spacecraft is trying to stop its spin from the cruise 2 revolutions per minute down to 0, and then will turn to its desired orientation from entry. It will separate the 2 balance masses that have kept it balanced during all of cruise. This will allow the entry capsule to have lift when it enters the atmosphere. We have confirmation that the spacecraft has turned to the desired entry attitude. We're about 7.5 minutes from entry interface.
Okay, the vehicle is pointed in the right direction. The thrusters are warmed up and doing their job. And now we've spun down from the 2 revolutions per minute that the vehicle had the whole way to Mars as a spin-stabilized spacecraft. And then from here on out, it's going to just be a bullet, and it's going to control its orientation and attitude via rockets on the back shell.
Points carrier lock. The DTE from Radio Science from Green Bank reports carrier lock. You see the carrier on the downlink. Flight level 1.
We are continuing to wait for entry interface. We're about 6 minutes and 45 seconds from entry interface. We have confirmation from Greenback that they are receiving direct-to-Earth telemetry via that path. The spacecraft Perseverance is currently transmitting heartbeat tones. These tones indicate that Perseverance is operating normally and has nothing significant to report. This is as expected. We're currently just over 6 minutes from entry interface.
Okay, and now we wait. As soon as we get to the top of the atmosphere, it will be very quickly, which is the entry point. It won't be very long before the atmosphere will start getting thicker and thicker. It's going very quickly at a fairly steep angle of 15 degrees into the atmosphere, and as it starts to slow down.
We're just under, we're about 5.5 minutes from entry interface. We're still receiving heartbeat tones. We expect to continue receiving heartbeat tones until about 5 minutes after entry. At that time, Perseverance will be no longer in view of our antennas here on Earth. About 90 seconds prior to entry, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter should begin receiving telemetry from Perseverance and streaming it to Earth in near real time. There are a few expected short outages, such as when we have a plasma blackout or when we enter the peak heating phase. Aside from these outages caused by the plasma blackout, antenna switching, or high dynamic events, spacecraft events, we should have telemetry until about 90 seconds after landing. A plasma blackout is when the signal from Perseverance isn't strong enough to make it through the superheated, super fast air flowing around the spacecraft all the way down to Earth. Once the temperature drops below that peak heating, we do reacquire the signal from Perseverance. We are currently about 4.5 minutes from entry interface. Perseverance continues to report heartbeat tones, indicating everything is nominal.
Okay, what we're looking for now is Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter should be in view soon of our vehicle and be able to listen to ones and zeros coming from a separate radio that's really designed to talk between spacecraft.
MRO reports the electro radio is powered on, ready to receive signals from the lander.
Okay, MRO is ready and able and waiting for to hear from our rover.
Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has reported that it's ready to receive the signals from Perseverance. It should be in a few minutes here. We're just
Flight level 1
from entry interface.
We don't need these ones and zeros, as Swati said, but to land safely, but we really need it for our own health and well-being today to keep our nerves under control. But
around this time, a second spacecraft, Maven, should begin picking up telemetry from Perseverance and will continue to record that telemetry until several minutes post-landing. We won't get that data for several hours after landing as it's being recorded and then will be forwarded to Earth later. We are continuing to receive heartbeat tones, indicating that everything is nominal. We're currently at about 3 minutes until entry interface.
Okay. Very soon we'll be getting ones and zeros, I hope, from our radio on the rover. The entry interface is nothing more than just an arbitrary place in the sky that we've defined to be above the atmosphere. But from that point on, there's definitely atmosphere, and above it there isn't.
We are 2 minutes from entry interface. Perseverance is to transmit heartbeat tones, indicating everything is nominal.
So the tones can tell us whether something's bad or not is happening. So far the heartbeat is doing well. So the vehicle thinks it's in good shape to land, which is a great sign.
We're just under 2 minutes from entry interface. As it gets closer to Mars, Perseverance is actually being pulled in by gravity and accelerating. By the time Perseverance reaches entry interface point, she should be going just under 5.4 kilometers per second. We're at about 90 seconds from entry interface and standing by for Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter to pick up the telemetry. We are 1 minute from entry interface.
MROs are in receive mode.
We have confirmation that the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter is now relaying data from Perseverance. We're about 30 seconds from entry interface. Perseverance is going about 5.2 kilometers per second and is about 190 kilometers altitude above the surface of Mars.
Confirm your eject data flow.
About seconds from entry interface. 5.3 kilometers per second and an altitude of about 150 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have confirmation of entry interface. Perseverance is currently going 5.3 kilometers per second at an altitude of about 120 kilometers from the surface of Mars. The spacecraft is now waiting until it begins feeling the atmosphere of Mars slow it down. Once there is enough atmosphere, it will start controlling its path to the landing target. Navigation is also confirming that we can see a little bit of that slowdown of the atmosphere on the Perseverance entry capsule. Our current velocity is about 5.36 kilometers per second and an altitude of about 67 kilometers from the surface.
We are probably seeing MRO plasma blackout at this point.
vehicle should be doing its turns right now.
Emerald has lost lock.
Perseverance. We have indications that Perseverance is now performing bank reversals in the atmosphere. These are the steps in order to control its distance to the landing target. Perseverance has just passed through the point of maximum deceleration and has indicated that it felt approximately 10 Earth Gs of deceleration.
Emerald has lock again.
Yes, 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 yes.
We saw a small outage of the UHF telemetry from Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter during that peak heating phase, likely caused by the plasma blackout. Perseverance is still continuing to perform bank reversals in the atmosphere to control its distance to the landing target. Perseverance is going about 1 kilometers per second at an altitude of about 16 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have entered heading alignment, which means Perseverance is no longer trying to control the distance to Mars, to the target on Mars, but instead is flying straight to the target.
Parachute.
Our current velocity is about 550 meters per second at an altitude of about 15 kilometers from the surface.
Emerald's reporting good telemetry lock.
We are coming upon the straighten up. We are starting the straighten up and fly right maneuver, where the spacecraft will jettison the entry balance masses in preparation for parachute deploy and to roll over to give the radar a better look at the ground.
Yes, yes, yes.
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed, and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
And just confirming that very...
Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds, and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
Parachute deployed, heat shield separated. This is looking very, very promising for Perseverance's landing. You are watching Trekzone live coverage of Perseverance landing on Mars. Stay with us. Not long to go now.
Yes, yes, yes.
Perseverance now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers above the surface of Mars. Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
Almost there.
We have confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution and part of terrain relative navigation. We have timing of the landing engines. Current velocity is 83 meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have confirmation that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about 1 kilometer off the surface of Mars.
TRN Safety Bravo.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars. We have started our constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the sky crane, about to conduct the sky crane maneuver.
We've lost direct to Earth tones.
As expected. As expected.
Sky crane maneuver has started, about 20 meters off the surface.
We're getting signals from MRO.
UHF is good.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life. At this point, the descent stage has flown away to a safe distance. Perseverance is continuing to transmit direct through Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter to Earth.
Oh my God. Oh. Oh.
MRO reports they're still getting telemetry from the lander.
All right, all stations.
We got it.
Touchdown confirmed. We're going to wait for the images.
Wow.
This is so exciting. The team is beside themselves. It's so surreal. Stay tuned. We might get some pictures.
That'd be great.
So much has been riding on this.
Yeah, we just heard the news that Perseverance is alive on the surface of Mars.
It's not
Fantastic result for all the team. Perseverance on Mars, completing a 7-month journey.
As expected.
MRO is still seeing a strong signal from the lander.
And as Glenn talked about in our coverage, the bouncing maneuver of the communications for the Mars rover are absolutely incredible. There I am. Bouncing it off the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, as you heard about there from them. As Ahsoka, hello, you've woken up. It is very exciting times. We are standing by to see if there are some pictures coming back from Perseverance. And in fact, I believe that there might just be.
Flight, I'll be moving in, showing you the safe zone that we've landed in.
Just put the first image from Perseverance on the surface of Mars. Now it comes from the engineering cameras known as the hazard camera. This camera is mainly used to help the rover drive safely around Mars, and we will get higher resolution photos later in the day.
This is amazing.
stand by for Steve.
Well, and there we go. That is live coverage from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, relayed through the Goldstone, Madrid, and coming up to the Tidbinbilla Deep Space Communication Stations as part of NASA's Deep Space Communication Network. This has been Trekzone live coverage of Perseverance arriving at Mars, completing a 7-month journey to the Red Planet, mission delays, and all sorts of other things. A thing of the past now. It's not even a factor of consideration. And people on the mission team, like Dr. David Flannery, who has been our guest the last couple of months here on Trekzone, are going to get stuck into the data that they're about to receive. The rover, as Glen talked about earlier in the live stream, the rover will be taking a nap. It's landed late on the Martian day, so it's going to take a nap overnight, make sure everything is all good. But we have confirmation. We have those pictures from Mars. They are less than 20 minutes old of the Martian surface. That in and of itself is absolutely incredible. Congratulations to the Perseverance team for getting there, for getting the job done. As you can tell, the mood at Mission Control is absolutely one of elation. Well, that's about all there is for a Trekzone live stream. A huge congratulations once again to the team at the JPL with those pictures coming back from Mars. Just absolutely incredible. Alrighty, well, that is how we do Trekzone Live. A little bit more coordinated in the future, but it has been absolutely thrilling to see the lander happen, see that whole entry interface, and just how quick it happens is absolutely incredible. Stay with Trekzone. We're going to have a full wrap-up on Talkin Science on Tuesday with Dr. Brad Tucker. Tomorrow, the Trekzone Variety Show continues. Keely and I diving into the next ep of WandaVision. 3 more of those to go. And then we've got Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So plenty of stuff to talk about on the Trekzone Variety Show. We've got the peek behind the curtain at Eagle Moss, thanks to Ben Robinson. That's coming up on the next Trekzone Conversation. Noah Averback-Katz is my guest this week on a Trekzone Conversation, so be on the lookout for that one. Talkin Science as well from this week as well, preluding the landing here on Mars. We've also got, what else have we done? Oh, the news. Yesterday, special day for Dad's birthday. We talked about the news. So that is all available on Trekzone. More Trekzone plays on Monday. Plenty of stuff to keep you excited. And just very quickly, the ratio of non-subscribers listening to or watching our streams has decreased, and I'm absolutely thrilled by that, but it's still at 80-20, so can you help us get it down even further? That would be absolutely incredible. If you see a red subscribe button here on YouTube, give it a smash, give it a tap, give it a like, and make it turn grey so that YouTube knows where we are and what I am doing. For now though, I'm Matt Miller at Trekzone I was going to say Trekzone HQ, it's Studio 4 and Trekzone HQ. Thanks for watching this Trekzone live stream. I'll catch you again real soon. Nope. I will. I promise. I will. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. I pressed the transition, not the ender. Here's the ender. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.